The universe changed as my wife's hand touched my face. I didn't anticipate it happening, not even for a second. As I sat at the dinner table, the sound of clinking cutlery and soft conversation filled the air. Then suddenly, an explosion of searing pain. My head jerked sideways, tilting dangerously before I stumbled and fell to the ground. The impact sent a ringing through my skull, my vision blurring at the corners. I lay there, palms flat against the cool wooden floor, gasping for air, unable to process what had just transpired. The taste of iron and salt lingered on my tongue, trapped somewhere between my neck and lungs. Was it from the slap or the shock? I wasn't sure, until I heard her voice. "How could you?" I gazed up at her, bewildered. My head was spinning. Claire's voice was sharp, raw with rage. I replayed every moment leading up to this, searching for something, anything that made sense. Just minutes ago, we were fine. In fact, dinner had been enjoyable, or so I believed. My eyes drifted to the far end of the table, to her mother. Lorraine's expression was unreadable. She sat rigidly, lips pursed. I couldn't hear what she whispered to Claire, but whatever she said changed my wife in an instant. Claire had been smiling until then. Now her face was twisted in fury and betrayal. I forced myself to stand, still in shock. "What are you not doing?" she yelled, her hands trembling. Her entire body was shaking. Fists clenched at her sides. I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just anger. This was something deeper, something shattered inside her, something I wasn't sure I could fix. "What should I do?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. Claire's breathing hitched. For a fleeting moment, hesitation flickered in her eyes, but just as quickly, it vanished. She turned away, snatched up her purse, then she bolted for the door. Panic exploded in my chest. This wasn't normal. We had disagreements like any other couple, but Claire had never been violent. She had never yelled at me, never looked at me like this. I scrambled to my feet. "Claire, wait!" She ignored me. She was almost at the door when she stopped. Her entire body went rigid. It was as if she had just heard her name whispered from the shadows. A heavy silence filled the room. She didn't turn around. She didn't move. Her fingers twitched over the strap of her purse. When she finally turned her head, her expression sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't anger. It wasn't betrayal. It was fear, pure, unfiltered terror, and I had no idea why. I took a step toward her. She flinched. I froze. My own wife was terrified of me. I had never hurt Claire. Not once, not even by accident. But the way she recoiled, like I was some kind of monster, sent a sharp, unbearable pain through my chest. This wasn't about the slap. This was something else. Behind her, Lorraine stood, slowly, calmly, almost, unnaturally so. She moved toward Claire, her voice soft, too soft. "Calm down, sweetheart. You don't have to stay here." For a moment, I thought Claire would leave with her immediately. But she hesitated. Her knuckles turned white against her purse strap. Something was really, really wrong. I needed answers. I wanted to shake Claire, to make her tell me what was going on. But I knew forcing her wouldn't help. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Claire, whatever this is, we can talk about it." Lorraine's lips curled into something, not quite a smile. Too tight, too forced. "You don't owe him anything, darling," she said gently. "Let's go." Claire finally met my eyes. For the briefest moment, she looked like she wanted to say something. But then, she shut down. She turned away and walked out the door. I stood there, frozen. The cold air from outside crept into the house as the door clicked shut. My own labored breathing was the only sound. I wiped my face and winced. My cheek throbbed where she had struck me. I still didn't know what I had done, but I knew one thing for certain. That slap had changed everything. Even though the night air was frigid, I hardly noticed it because I was preoccupied with one thought. Since she hadn't stolen the car, she was likely on foot when she found Claire. But where would my wife go? I knew that when she needed space, she moved to either the nearby park or the old downtown bookstore she used to frequent. She would spend hours perusing literature she never had time to read. So, I began there. The park was peaceful, the dim streetlights casting long shadows on the sidewalk as I walked. My footsteps reverberated in the quiet as I neared the park entrance, my breathing quick and shallow. And then, I noticed Claire. She stood by the fountain, her back to me, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. Her head was bowed, tight with tension. I swallowed hard and forced the words out of my throat. Claire, I muttered softly. She stiffened, but she didn't turn around. I took a cautious step closer. Her voice was scratchy, barely above a whisper. She let out a trembling breath before asking, "Why do you have that letter?" I hesitated, then reached into my pocket. I never threw it away. Claire turned, her face a storm of emotions. Her eyes were red-rimmed, torn between anger and something much worse. Betrayal. "You lied to me," she whispered. "No, Claire." I shook my head. Her eyes flicked to the letter in my hands. "Then explain," she demanded, her voice shaking. I clenched my jaw. Lorraine had done what she did best, twisted the truth, wrapped it in enough poison to make Claire doubt everything she believed. Lowering my voice, I stepped closer. "Whatever your mother told you, I need you to listen." She didn't move, but she also didn't walk away. Taking a deep breath, I braced myself to tell her the truth about the letter, my past, and the one person I had tried my entire life to forget. Claire wasn't just upset. She was afraid. And that devastated me. I had seen her frustrated, angry, even distant. But this was something else. A deeper fear, one that wrapped around her so tightly she was shaking. She held the letter. Now, her fingers gripping it so hard the paper crumpled beneath them. She hadn't spoken since I promised to explain. She just stood there, her breathing uneven, her eyes flickering with emotion. I took a careful step forward, feeling as if the letter between us was some damning piece of evidence in a trial I wasn't ready for. "Claire, She cut me off. Her voice was sharp, edged with uncertainty. "I need space. I can't be near you right now." The words hit harder than I expected. Space. Such a simple word, yet at that moment, it felt like the final crack in already fractured glass. I swallowed. "Hard! Claire, please!" I pleaded. "Let me explain!" But she wasn't listening. She clutched the letter to her chest, as if it was a shield, guarding herself from the person she thought I had become. And then, without another word, she turned and walked away. I wanted to run after her, grab her hand, make her look at me, make her see that Lorraine was lying. But deep down, I knew. If I pushed her now, I would lose her entirely. So I let her go. I watched as she disappeared down the pavement, her hair and arms caught in the wind. She held herself as if trying to keep from collapsing, and after a long, painful moment, I turned and walked away too. But I needed help. Someone who would listen. Someone who would believe me. I took out my phone, scrolling through my contacts, until I found the one person I knew I could trust, Marcus. I pressed the call button. It rang twice before he picked up. "Man, you never call this late unless it's serious." His voice was casual, but I could hear the concern beneath it. I exhaled sharply, my throat tightening. There was a pause. Too long, too heavy. "Marcus, I need you." 10 minutes later, I was pulling into his driveway. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles were white. My mind was racing in 100 different directions. By the time I got out of the car, the porch light was already on. Marcus stood in the doorway, dressed in old sweatpants and a t-shirt, his face unreadable. "All right," he said, stepping aside. "Come in. Tell me everything." I didn't even wait for him to close the door before I started. She slapped me, Marcus. His eyebrows shot up. "Wait, what?" I ran a hand through my hair, pacing the length of his living room. We were having dinner. Everything was fine. Then, Lorraine. She looked at me like I was the worst person in the world. I let out a bitter laugh. I don't even know what she told Claire, but whatever it was, it worked. Marcus folded his arms. Claire's never reacted like this before. I hesitated. Then, pulling the crumpled letter from my pocket, I handed it to him. His expression shifted from confusion to understanding. "Damn." "Yeah." I cut in. "Claire thinks I've been hiding something from her." Marcus let out a slow breath, rubbing the back of his neck. "And Lorraine? She gave this to her?" I nodded. "She's been trying to ruin my marriage since day one." Marcus sighed, shaking his head. "I hate to say it, man, but I told you from the start. Letting Lorraine move in was a mistake." "I know. So, what now?" I ran a hand down my face, exhaustion pressing in. "Claire says she needs space. But if Lorraine is feeding her lies, I don't know if space is gonna help. The longer I'm away, the more she twists things." Marcus was silent for a moment, then leaned forward. "Maybe it's time you stopped playing defense." I frowned. "What?" "You've been reacting to everything Lorraine throws at you. But maybe it's time you take control. Find out exactly what she told Claire. Get ahead of it. If you sit back and... wait, you'll lose her." I swallowed hard. "And if I've already lost her?" "You haven't," Marcus said firmly. "Not yet. But you need to move fast." His words stuck with me long after I left his apartment. I didn't sleep that night. I checked my phone 100 times, hoping for a message from Claire. But there was nothing. By the time the first rays of sunlight peeked through the blinds, exhaustion weighed down my body, but my mind refused to shut down. I had to fix this. So I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and scrolled to Claire's name. I hesitated, just for a second. Then I pressed call. It rang twice before she picked up. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was cold, final, tomorrow. And as the call ended, I realized I had less than 24 hours to stop my marriage from falling apart.